I'm here with Shana Pearlman, author of The Palin Effect, the Money, Sex and Class in the New American Politics. So the book's about the drama of US politics, really, isn't it? Especially during the election process.
It is. It's about the fact that a lot of people make decisions when it comes to U.S. politics, particularly in presidential elections, with their hearts and not their heads. It's about how it appeals to our emotion, not actually our intellectual understanding of U.S. policy. And this can have pretty deleterious effects when it comes to actual things that affect us, like energy policy, economic policy, foreign policy. And because we judge things on how we feel rather than what we know, we actually can make pretty poor decisions.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying it's about the new American politics. I mean, how is it new? How is it different from the politics we've seen before?
Well, we've always seen these kind of emotive appeals, but we never saw people really making things up out of whole cloth about politicians until 2008. 2008 was a very, very different election from anything that had gone before, because most of the time people would create vicious attacks against one another. The stuff that happened against John Kerry with the Swift boat attacks and so forth, even though that was pretty nasty, it was more or less true. But stuff that was said about Sarah Palin was literally just made up, created out of nothing. And because people wanted to believe certain things about her and about politicians like her, they believed them despite the facts that were presented to them and despite the evidence that was right in front of their faces. And I thought, as a journalist at that time, and just a political observer now, it's not fair, it's not right. We need to make political decisions about facts, not about how we feel.
So do you think it's a case of regulation, or is it just a case of the people around the election and the people involved being more responsible, or is it the public trying to look a little bit deeper into the issues?
I think it's the latter. I mean, I don't blame the media for trying to tell exciting stories. People like exciting stories. They like drama. They like melodrama. They love the soap opera. I mean, who doesn't love, this mom with 5 kids and her daughter turns up pregnant, the day of the Republican convention. I mean, it was a fantastic story. But on the other hand, we have to be more responsible. And we have to say, while this is an interesting distraction, seriously, is this actually going to help us determine who's going to be the next leader of the free world? And for a lot of this stuff, it just wasn't.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying it's about money, sex and class. And what would you say is the biggest motivator out of those 3? What would you say is the biggest culprit, maybe?
That's a really difficult question to ask. It's pretty clear that the upper middle class and middle class in America do not like and fear and do not want the working class to get the levers of power in the United States. And that was behind a lot of the animosity towards Sarah Palin. It was just simple class anxiety. They didn't want some hick from Alaska with a degree from the University of Idaho. Could it be any more gauche anywhere near the levers of power? And that's all it was. It didn't have anything to do with her policies or how she felt about things or her intelligence. It was all about ick. She has a funny accent. I don't like it. But the other thing that we have to remember is that the money that goes into American elections is almost unbelievable. President Obama this year is going to raise $1 billion just for his campaign alone. $1 billion, which is more than the GDP of, I can't tell you how many countries, numerous countries. And when you have to raise that kind of money, you don't do it by talking about interest rates or the estate tax or agriculture policy. You do it by appealing to people's fears. And because they need to raise so much money, that's why we have all these fears floating around. If you vote for Rick Santorum, you're voting against women because you hate women. Or if you don't vote for Barack Obama, horrible things are going to happen to you. That's not exactly true, but it helps bring in the money.
Yeah. So, I mean, how are you seeing it translate into what we've got going on at the moment with this election?
Oh, it's really clear. We're not actually talking about Barack Obama's record at all. That's what we should be talking about. He's been president for the last 4 years. We need to judge him, rightly or wrongly, on what he's done. But instead, we're talking about things like whether or not Mitt Romney pays enough tax. He pays more tax than he's legally supposed to pay. Now, you might have a problem with U.S. tax policy, but that's not Mitt Romney's fault. Or we're sitting around talking about Barack Obama's Spotify playlist. I want to talk about the fact that last month 1.2 million people dropped out of the workforce because they just couldn't find a job. That's a germane issue. What Barack Obama's campaign staff listens to on the campaign trail, I don't think that's relevant to what we need to be talking about right now.
No. So what do you think are the issues that we do need to be talking about? What are the key issues at this election?
The big one's the economy. That's what everyone's going to care about. We've lost a lot of jobs. A lot of people have dropped out of the workforce permanently. The middle class is on the point of splintering. What exactly are we going to do? How are we going to get back to the place where it wasn't a huge economic burden to buy a house? It isn't a huge economic burden to go to university. That's what we need to be talking about. We've got major foreign issues that we've got to deal with. What are we going to do about the situation in Iran? Is there going to be a nuclear Iran? What is that going to mean for the safety of the neighborhood? What are we going to do about Syria? People are dying there every day. What are we going to do about the economic situation in Egypt? That's what we need to be talking about. We don't need to be spending time on gay marriage, contraception, abortion. I know these are emotive issues that people care about, but honestly, if there's a nuclear weapon hurtling towards Jordan from Iran, do we really need to be saying whether or not Rick Santorum wants to have contraception given out in schools or not? I don't think it's that big a concern.
And this book is primarily about American politics, but
Yes.
I mean, how are you seeing it translate maybe over here? I mean, it's slightly different, like you were saying about the money, it's not quite the same over here with that sort of fundraising, but how have you seen it translate?
I think in the 2010 election with the debates, that was kind of the first step in the Americanization of British politics. Because what did everybody talk about when they said, oh, Nick Clegg won the debates? He was able to look at people, he was able to say their name, he looked great, he looked confident, he seemed like a prime minister. Who cares if he seems like a prime minister? Can he do the job or can he not do the job? It's not about being personable or being somebody you can relate to. It's about being the best guy who has the best approach to solve the problems that we're facing. And you know, I fear that if we have more debates, and I suspect we will, we're going to be heading down this road where it all becomes all about image, not about substance.
Mm-hmm. And, so the book's called The Palin Effect, so I have to ask you the question, I mean, how long do you think it's going to be before the US sees a woman president? Are they going to see one?
It will be a long time. I mean, it was ugly, and it wasn't just ugly to Palin, it was ugly to Hillary. I mean, the stuff that was said about Hillary, even by Democrats, was shocking, absolutely shocking. I think we will not see a woman president in my lifetime.
Okay. Thanks very much for speaking to me.
Sure.